All right, so we are continuing. This is going to be part 2. Okay, so this is where we finish with book 1, part 9. So it's also going to be starting with book 9, part 2. All right, remember that we have met this individual here, the Cyclops, okay, and that Odysseus and his men have entered into this cave, and they are talking about having this very strong brandy. All right, continuing. A wineskin full I brought along, and victuals in a bag. All right, this concept of victuals right here is going to be our food, okay? You can see where it gives our explanation here. For in my bones I knew some towering brute would be upon us soon, all outward power. A wild man, ignorant of civility. Okay, here again we have another concept here, and it says polite behavior. We climbed then briskly to the cave, but Cyclops had gone afield, okay? So if we look at this here, this is singular. So this is the one Cyclops who lives within the cave. Had gone afield to pasture his fat sheep. So he looked round at everything inside. A drying rack that sagged with cheeses, pens crowded with lambs and kids, each in its class, firstlings apart from middlings, and the dewdrops, or newborn lambkins, penned apart from both. All right, so it's talking here about how the Cyclops had separated his lambs into different age groups so that you did not have bigger, essentially, lambs and kids. And so if we're looking at it in terms of lambs and kids, lambs, of course, are going to tie to sheep, and kids, of course, are going to tie to goats. So we have both sheep. He's keeping both sheep and goats here. And vessels full of whey were brimming there, bowls of earthenware and pails for milking. My men came pressing round, pleading. All right, so if we're looking at this, the sheep are going to be used for probably wool and meat. Goats would be definitely the ones that are going to be used for milking. Remember that Greek cheese is also known as feta cheese, and it is a much desired cheese for many. I know that I like to use feta cheese on salads as well as I really like it on pizza. Why not take these cheeses, get them stowed, come back, throw open all the pens and make a run for it. We'll drive the kids and lambs aboard. We say, put out again on good salt water. Okay, so he's being encouraged to just take all of the lambs and kids and all the cheeses and take off. Ah, how sound that was. Yet I refused. Okay, Odysseus refused this. I wished to see the caveman, what he had to offer. No pretty sight it turned out for my friends. We lit a fire, burnt an offering, and took some cheese to eat. Then sat in silence around the embers waiting. When he came, he had a load of dry boughs on his shoulder to stoke his fire at supper time. He dumped it with a great crash into that hollow cave, and we all scattered fast to the far wall. Then, over the broad cavern floor, he ushered the ewes he meant to milk. He left his rams and he-goats in the yard outside and swung high overhead a slab of solid rock to close the cave. 24 four-wheeled wagons with heaving wagon teams could not have stirred the tonnage of that rock from where he wedged it over the doorsill. Next, he took his seat and milked his bleeding ewes. A practice job he made of it, giving each ewe her suckling. Thickened his milk, then, into curds and whey, sieved out the curds to drip in withy baskets, and poured the whey to stand in bowls, cooling, until he drank it for his supper. So we're talking about here is that we have a cave opening, okay? And in the cave opening, okay, the Cyclops is going to roll a great stone. And this stone is going to be so big, so large, okay, that 24 four-wheeled wagons could not move that stone. Okay, 24. So that means 12 is a dozen times 2. So that means 24 wagon teams drawn by horses, mules, or oxen could not have moved this. So that means these men are going to be trapped within here with this Cyclops. And he is now getting ready to make his meal of the using the milk that he just was able to take from the ewes. When all these chores were done, he poked the fire, heaping on brushwood. In the glare, he saw us. "Strangers," he said, "who are you and where from? What brings you here by seaways, a fair traffic? Or are you wandering rogues who cast your lives like dice and ravage other folk by sea?" So the Cyclops here, it says, the Cyclops asks whether the seafaring men are here for honest trading, fair traffic, or are dishonest people, rogues who steal or ravage those they meet. We felt a pressure on our hearts and dread of that deep rumble and that mighty man. But all the same I spoke in reply. "We are from Troy, Achaeans, blown off course by shifting gales on the great South Sea, homeward bound but taking routes and ways uncommon, so the will of Zeus would have it. We served under Agamemnon, son of Atreus." Okay, and we're going to talk about, this is Agamemnon. He is the one that was married to Helen. And he would have been the leader, and the reason why the Trojan War supposedly was started was at Agamemnon's behest. "The whole world knows what city he laid waste, what armies he destroyed. It was our luck to come here. Here we stand, beholden for your help or any gifts you give, as custom is to honor strangers. We would entreat you, great sir, have a care for the gods' courtesy. Zeus will avenge the unoffending guest." So he's reminding the Cyclops the rules by which all people in the Mediterranean live, which is this concept of hospitality and the way that you are supposed to treat guests. Okay, it's a sacred Greek custom to honor strangers with food and gifts. Odysseus is warning the Cyclops that Zeus will punish anyone who mistreats a guest. So you're supposed to take anyone into your home and honor them by coming to your home with food and gifts. But also remember, this is a two-way street. The guest would also have to pay in kind with their own gifts. He answered this from his brute chest unmoved. "You are a ninny, or else you come from the other end of nowhere. Tell me, mind the gods, we Cyclopses care not a whistle for your thundering Zeus, or all the gods in bliss. We have more force by far. I would not let you go for fears of Zeus, you or your friends, unless I had a whim to. Tell me, where was it now? You left your ship around the point or down the shore, I wonder?" All right, so he's calling him a ninny. Okay, another word for ninny is fool. So this Cyclops, okay, it's asking you here, what do you think is the Cyclops' attitude toward the gods? Now, this Cyclops, obviously, we're referring to Zeus here. He doesn't care about Zeus. Zeus is king of the gods, okay? Remember who the Cyclops' father is. All Cyclops' father is Poseidon. With Poseidon being the father of the Cyclops, they don't care about Zeus as much. They don't think Zeus has as much power. Sorry, I'm gonna yawn. He thought he'd find out, but I saw through this and answered with a ready lie. So we're going to take a pause there because I want to make sure we point out these words to know here at the bottom of the page, because these will be on the quiz. We have entreat, to ask earnestly or beg. Avenge, to take revenge on behalf of. Whim, a sudden impulse or notion. fancy. Taking a second here and just keeping this on that point so that you are able to take the time to write down these vocabulary words within your notes that you are taking, because you know that these vocabulary words are important because they're going to be on the quiz. All right, continuing on to the next page here. Now, I'm going to point out some things that you probably would have noticed and you need to make sure that are in your notes. Agamemnon is going to be an important character. So we want to remind ourselves that he's a Greek king and he led the war against the Trojans. And the reason was he was offended by his wife Helen running off with the Prince of Troy, Paris. Continuing on to the next stop, we have Odysseus speaking to the Cyclops. And remember, it says he was ready with a lie. My ship, Poseidon, Lord, who sets the earth a-tremble, broke it up on the rocks on your land's end. A wind from seaward served him, drove us there. We are survivors, these good men and I. So remember, he has lied here. For some reason, he knows it is important. Sorry, just noticed. It is important to lie to the Cyclops. For some reason, he knows that the Cyclops is not going to be overly kind to him. He's not treating him like he is a civil individual. He's already determined that he is not civil by the terms of the Greeks because he does not engage in farming and he lives alone. So he says that he is shipwrecked. That is not true. Okay, remember, he does have a ship, and so he would be able to escape if they're able to exit the cave. Neither reply nor pity came from him, but in one stride he clutched at my companions and caught two in his hands like squirming puppies to beat their brains out, spattering the floor. Then he dismembered them and made his meal, gaping and crunching like a mountain lion, everything, innards, flesh, and marrow bones. We cried aloud, lifting our hands to Zeus, powerless, looking on at this, appalled. All right, so it says here, 193 to 196, the two similes in this passage emphasize the helplessness of the men, like squirming puppies, and the savagery of the Cyclops, gaping and crunching like a mountain lion. Remember, they're looking to Zeus because this Cyclops has broken the laws of hospitality. And so Zeus, they're calling to Zeus. They're essentially calling out to Zeus to say, this bad thing has happened. Please intervene on our behalf. But Cyclops went on filling up his belly with man flesh and great gulps of whey, then lay down like a mast among his sheep. All right, so we know that we have two men right here now that are dead. My heart beat high now at the chance of action, and drawing the sharp sword from my hip, I went along his flank to stab him where the midriff holds the liver. I touched the spot when sudden fear stayed me. If I killed him, we perished there as well, for we could never move his ponderous doorway slab aside. So we were left to groan and wait for morning. Okay, so he's about to take his revenge, but he realizes if he does take his revenge and kills the Cyclops right now, they're all dead because they will not be able to move the stone that's blocking the door. So they will be forced to stay within this cave forever. And though they do have some food, in the form of the sheep and the cheese, eventually those things are going to run out. Sheep and goats cannot make milk if they do not have water. When the young dawn, with fingertips of rose, lit up the world, the Cyclops built a fire and milked his handsome ewes, all in due order, putting the sucklings to the mothers. Then, his chores being all dispatched, he caught another brace of men. Okay, so we have another brace of men. So if it's the same as before, we have another 2. And whisked away to make his breakfast, and whisked away his great door slab to let his sheep go through. But he behind reset the stone as one would cap a quiver. Okay, so he's referring to here how easily the Cyclops is able to move this stone back and forth. So this is his door. It's not a problem for him to move it at all. So think about how large this Cyclops has to be, and how strong he is, and how the Odysseus and his men are so trapped and have no way to retaliate against this Cyclops, even though he's already just now killed 2 of the men. There was a din of whistling as the Cyclops rounded his flock to higher ground than stillness. And now I pondered how to hurt him worst. If but Athena granted what I prayed for, here are the means I thought would serve my turn. Okay, so he's talking about coming up with a plan here. So let's look at, okay, our words here on the bottom. Yet again, we know that these words are going to be important. Appalled, filled with dismay, horrified. Okay, it is going to be the version for the verb is going to be appall. Appalled is actually going to be an adjective. It's describing something. Ponderous, heavy in a clumsy way, bulky. So take a second to include these terms in your notes. I'm going to stop this one right now because I don't want to go too long. I'm noticing we're already at